Hi there, again, Coffee for Behaviorist. But today we have kind of a little bit different um, subject. And our subject would be allow your dog to shine and how your dog can help you during your healing process. Of course, to learn more about mental health and where to get help in case you need help around your mental or emotional health issues, please visit adaa.org for more information. This video is not a healing video, and we will not give you instructions how to get help, but we're going to talk about dogs and how to observe your dog and how help your dog through this healing process. So, I'm a complex trauma survivor. I don't call myself victim anymore. I used to do that. And so I would share a little bit of my personal experience. And of course, it's my personal experience. I'm not telling you how to do and what to do. But I want to give you a little bit of a heads up that you're not alone. And if you have somebody in your family, you may want to kind of get a little bit of a background of my experience around emotional development, trauma, and how dogs help me a lot. So I'm a holistic dog trainer and behaviorist, and I specialized in trauma with dogs with different complex behaviors. And at the same time, because of my experience recovering from trauma or healing trauma um, over the last 50 years, I guess, I have a pretty good overview on how I, and a better understanding how I went through it using or not using, having the support of my dogs and with the dogs I'm working with. So, first of all, dogs are sentient beings. Period. It's not new. We know that. And I want to go to the next level and say dogs are not only emotionally intelligent, but dogs are truly, I'll say this way. I cannot imagine how humanity would evolve without having dogs on our side. And if some people say dogs are family, I would say we should be grateful for the dog species to be with us in our emotional journey and our emotional experience here on earth, because we would not make it so far. We would feel unsafe. We would likely not be, you know, gathering food for us as easy as we did with dogs. And even though science can prove that dogs live with us for at least 40,000 years, I have sources that are, of course, not scientific based, but old scripts that refer to 100,000 years and beyond that. So, from my understanding, being as energy healer myself and intuitive, I have the awareness that where dogs are coming from, they're highly intelligent beings that choose to be with us in this reality as dogs, like the dogs we see. And however, they're in that transition, they're not changing their abilities. They come here to evolve themselves like we do. And from where they're coming from my experience, um, they have this, let's call it free will hierarchy, um, similar to our democracy, a little bit more strict. They don't really have emotional freedom as we do. They're kind of more restricted into um, compliance through obligations kind of situation. And that obligation has rights. So we are compliant, and because we are compliant to the system, we have rights. The more compliant you are, the more rights you have, kind of, sort of. And that, take it with a grain of salt. It's my personal um, awareness, understanding of that. Some people may have different understanding. However, being a little bit more specific, dogs come from a high frequency, and in order to interact with us in that reality, they're they're dumping themselves down in order for us to be able to function. I do feel that our awareness here on Earth is here for us to evolve as species, and we are not everything, but we are part of this complex system that we call Earth, or our humanity. And we are not better than anybody else. We are not better than plants. We are not better than dogs. We just have a specific task to do, and we're supposed to do it. So one of those tasks would be, for example, um, dealing with our emotions and our emotional trauma, a reflection of, or an aspect of the one that we believe in, that is giving feedback. Who am I in relationship to my environment as a feedback to the creation? So I'm part of the creation. You are part of the creation. Everybody's part of the creation. Dogs are part of everything around you. Everything that you see, that you don't see, that you don't know. It doesn't really matter. It is part of that big um, force that is out there. Try to understand or try to evolve. Now, I believe there are different kind of forces out there, but the one that we are aware of, that we are referring to, is the one that affects us and our universal system. And there are millions of universes out there. Don't go bigger than that. It really doesn't matter to us in particular what's going on beyond that. But I recognize that dogs play a significant role more than any other species on that earth. The way they interact with people and the way they can communicate, even if it's not verbal. And I feel being able to communicate is not really verbal. To communicate with language is not such a big thing, because dogs are intuitive. Dogs can communicate with each other using telepathic communications, and we basically suck. So I wouldn't say that we are much more advanced. Paul, force being energy. No, I would not say we are forced to. I would say we are, um, let's say we agreed upon, or we arranged it for ourselves. I don't see any force into it. We're not forced into it. It's our choice, and we are in a free will plane, and we are free species. We just restrict ourselves. So dogs come in to help us through this process when we free will choose into that incarnation and go through that experience that for some of us is traumatic because there's a lot of things happening. And I wouldn't say that it's our fault that we are where we are right now. And I don't think it's my personal fault that, I went through my traumatic experience, but I would say that I paved my path to be in that healing journey, and all the obstacles were part of that for me to learn. And I would see it more as a role play of my environment, the way it affected me, and I attracted to come into my space and into my life for me to learn from it, right? And to evolve. Am I evolved? No, I didn't say that. But I'm working on it. And many of you will work on that, I guess. And appreciate you for being here. By the way, where are you guys watching from? I'm in Eugene, Oregon. That's kind of a little dot in the West Coast, a little bit up over California, like southwestish of Oregon, not at the beach, just a little bit more in the mountainside. And I would love to hear from you guys where you're listening from. And I appreciate you for taking the time and sit down with me and having a coffee with behaviorists. But it's really not about behavior, but actually it does. It really affects. Yeah. And yeah, we're having a chat here, okay? The only problem is you cannot talk, but I can. So you're welcome to chat about it. So, yes, life is a spiritual evolution, but don't take spiritual evolution something that is religious, okay? Spirituality is something bigger than that. It's more kind of like the energy behind everything that moves us forward for us to evolve. So I try to keep my brain out of the equation and try to kind of really tap into And hi everyone. And I would love for you to chime in here because I know most of you have similar experiences, and my experience is not worse than yours or better than yours. There is not just such quality of that, but I appreciate you for taking that path in this lifetime and be part. And just give you a heads up, I'm planning to do a workshop on how we are all one, right? The dogs, the universe, the trees, the plants, and the dogs in particular, because that's my tendency here. Um, and see how we are connected. So we are connected. That will be the next workshop. So go to my website or sign up here. Of course, you get updates, and subscribe in my YouTube channel if you guys are, or follow me on Facebook. However, you go to my website, holisticdogtraining.org, and what will going to happen is you will be able to sign in to my events, right? And if you sign in for the events, you get updates of those events. So one thing that I recognize over the years is that everything that I do affect my environment. And the way the environment responds to that feedback is affecting me in return. So my actions affect my environment and my environment affect me. So we have kind of like a thing going on. And I remember when I was a child, I think I was 2000, 1974. I was 6. I was playing in my yard. I was in Middle East back then. And I was playing in my yard, and suddenly somebody passes by, opens the gate of that yard. It was kind of a brick fence kind of thing. You guys in Britain likely know exactly what I'm talking about. Kind of a brick wall all the way up. And opened the metal gate, and my dog ran off. And he took a couple of feet further out the street, and he got hit by a car. And I was faced with a situation that my dog was on the ground, bleeding, and I was like a 6-year old, crying, screaming, yelling, and tried to get help because my parents weren't there at the house. So my father was working, my stepmother wasn't even there. I don't know. Um, and it was literally the longest day in my life ever, trying to find somebody to help me with my dog who was bleeding and basically dying. I found a taxi driver who pulled over. Of course, I didn't speak the language. It was, Arabic, and I just recently moved with my parents to Iraq. But that event, that not able to be communicative with somebody that you need help with, plus having your dog dying in your arms as a 6-year old, plus not knowing what the word veterinarian sounds like in Arabic, and not giving any directions because the taxi driver just didn't know what he wanted to help me, but he couldn't because he didn't know how to help me because he didn't, in Iraq back then in time in the 70s, veterinarians, I don't think they had maybe they had some, but not something you can Google or, look up on a phone, book. That wasn't the case. So I think we were driving around an hour or so around the taxi. He was wanted to help me. I don't remember if this guy actually hit my dog. I didn't. I did. I basically don't remember that part. But I was grateful that he tried to help me. And what I learned from that, unfortunately, is that you get more help from your stranger than you would get from your family. But at the same time, that awareness came in with my dog's passing. So my dog's passing helped me go into that awareness that strangers can help you, that come out of nowhere. And this event basically stigmatized my whole life, that and other pieces. And I remember later on when my parents came back, I got basically yelled at because what happened to the dog, and they didn't believe me that somebody opened the gate and let the dog out. And for some reason, I did not understand why my parents did not find it reasonable to, um, how you call it, dig the dog into the ground, like you do a funeral or something. They just drop the dog in the field like a bag of dirt. And the only thing I could do, I didn't know back then what you do in a funeral. I didn't know the word funeral, but so I thought that is what you do. An animal dies, you drop it somewhere on the ground, and then you watch it decomposing, I guess, right? Burning. Thank you, Michelle. And so, one thing that shocked me looking backwards is that I didn't got so much knowledge from my parents as I learned from that dog how life changes from one day to be alive and then the other day to start decomposing. And it took a couple of weeks. I was watching every day. I was went there and kind of like mourn my dog, which is another experience I learned. I was able to mourn my dog over that period of time, but it came very healthy experience because over the periods of times I lost people and I went through those losing friends and family, I kind of didn't went through this pain that I experienced at that time. So that was the worst pain that I ever had. I remember I was crying for a week nonstop. I wouldn't go to school and this kind of stuff because I just couldn't. But that mourning process gave me a lot of insight. And insight that I didn't wasn't aware when I was a child, but later when I was an adult. Through my lifetime, through different traumas, for many years, I didn't have a dog, which I'm sad about. But unfortunately, because of me moving around and I was in a boarding home, dogs were not allowed. And I went through Greece and then back to Austria. My grandparents definitely didn't want not animal people. So the only thing that I had was other people's dogs that I was able to handle. And in Austria, people don't have so many dogs than we have here in the US. The average of dog owners in Austria is much lower than here in the US. We have an average of 2 dogs per family. There are more dogs in families than children in families. Weird, right? But I also learned that affection that I got from those stranger dogs was interesting because I felt that care and love that I didn't feel from my own parents. And that was also a life experience because also I recognized with those families who had those dogs, those people were not always nice people. Some of them were drunk, some of them abused, narcotics, and some of them were just working people, and some of them were not many times at home. And there was all these different type of people. So you could see those different family systems, and all those dogs had one consistency. They didn't care who you presented to be. They only cared who you really are. And I was able to note that the dog doesn't really care what your fake personality is, your fake persona, but he cares your potential. He sees the potential in you. And I was wondering later, how is it possible for the dog to understand that potential? Why would the dog care about me if I'm drunk? People don't care about me if I would be drunk. I've never been drunk, but I'm just saying. And how about the dog doesn't care and make a difference if you're sick? He cares, but he doesn't do it like people do. So there is an honesty behind that. And back then, I really had struggled with honesty. I wasn't honest. I lied a lot because every time I did something, whether I did it or not, I got punished for it. So my way out of those situations is to try to lie myself into a better position for not getting hurt or punished. It was kind of like if something happened in the household, it wasn't even my fault. I got accused for it. And so I started creating mechanisms to avoid that. But the dogs really didn't care about that because he didn't understand my lie. All he saw is who I am. And that gave me a lot of comfort. And I know many of you guys who are more introverts and don't have good experiences with people, you trust dogs more. Why is that? Why do you trust dog more? What is the essence of it? And how can it help you? So one thing I recognized over the years that we have 3 categories of dogs. Let's call it 3 qualities of dogs that coming in as energies. We have a teacher, we have a companion, and we have a healer. Now, qualities, spiritual qualities, by the way, just to make sure that we talk the same thing. A teacher And I have a diagram. Basically, imagine an Enneadic diagram, a diagram with 9 fields. The first field, the first row, we have horizontal and vertical row and lines. Okay, now we got it right. So the vertical ones is the healer, the teacher, healer, and companion. And then you have the horizontal lines, which is a teacher, a healer, and companion, right? So you have vertical lines and horizontal lines that have the same words on it. However, in the first field is the teacher, which is the highest quality on animals or dogs. It can have all the animals who have emotions, I would say. And um, by the way, I just wrote a scientific paper today, and was kind of the reason of me looking into that. And also, my wife Barbara pulled some cards from me because I needed to know what should I talk about today. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I have no clue what the situation would be today. And so we pulled a card, and it said about how how we affect our environment and how our emotions affect our environment. And I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking yesterday. And that um, research that I saw, I'm going to share a link at some point, says that dogs also perceive emotions that most of you guys deny. And I was like, yes, they do have emotions. Yes, they do feel jealousy, by the way. That was the research about. And understanding that sometimes I felt jealous about my dogs. And sometimes the dogs felt jealous about other dogs that were in my presence. And all of a sudden, we saw these energies shifting around. And going back to my Enneadic diagram, um, the teacher, which is the highest, let's say, quality of an animal, has the abilities to remember and know the agreement. I'm not saying contract, the agreement. When they come here to earth, we have an agreement, people and dogs in that case. And it seems like our higher self or our collective has an agreement with the dog collective, or the energy that represents the dog collective, to help us in the ascension process. For you guys who not sure what ascension means, I would rather, Google it. And one very nice, interesting site would be the glossary, um, Ascension glossary, and Google Ascension glossary, and Google Ascension process, and it explains to a couple of people. And one other thing that I recognize is that after the teacher that has all this knowledge through this agreement, or this arrangement, and the way they have access to our data, let's say to our original data. Some people call it Akashic archives. And I would say, yeah, they have kind of an information center. They can access certain quality of data, level number 1 or level number 2. And they know our journey. There's an awareness behind that. And the way they work as species is they have these teachers. They're very strict about how to apply that knowledge. So, for example, your potential is to handle your anger, and you're going through this ascension process by dealing with emotions that is called anger with different life experiences. You have to observe these different versions of that anger and how to heal it for yourself or for your ancestors. The dog comes in with this accuracy, precision. This is how it has to be done. This is how I feel like, and they are very strict about it. So those teachers have the ability to not force, but put you in a position to have immediately feedback in the extensity of how you feel to them. So if you're angry against the teacher, he will reflect anger to you in this most available possibility, and you likely get hurt or bit. That's his potential. Now, if we look in the second row, we have a healer. So we have a healer teacher, because the vertical line is primary and the horizontal line is secondary. So the healer teacher is the same quality, but it comes in from a different aspect. He has the healing aspect into it. And so the healing aspect includes that you cannot get harmed to get that information. It's your choice, the way you choose that dog into that arrangement. What is the potential you want to be in? And that healer will be able to challenge you, like barking at your face and, you know, challenging you, push you in a corner without you getting hurt. And then if you go to the next aisle, the next row, which is the companion, you have companion teacher. And this one will show you the basically the opposite or the other spectrum of a teacher, which is I am who I am and you bother me and your aggression is not in alignment with what I believe, and I would just walk away from it. So all of a sudden you see these three, vertical qualities of a dog: teacher, 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 healer, teacher, companion, have different effects the way you get that information. If a dog avoids you because you're angry, if a dog tries to corner you because you're angry, or a dog who bites you because you're angry. And then we go to the second row, right? Is it line? Second line, sorry. The second line, where we have the healer line, we have a teacher healer. The teacher healer has the ability to hurt you or to cause you pain, but not to physically hurt you. So he can emotionally hurt you, but not physically. So he can bark at you, he can snap at you, but you get more emotionally hurt than physically. And then you have the healer, which is my perception of a therapy dog in the best option. So if somebody wants a therapy dog or wants to work with therapy dogs, that will be the dog to choose from, a healer that is there to really help you through the healing process without causing you any emotional pain or any physical harm, and guides you through the process in a very gentle way, which is amazing. And then if you go to the next line, we have the companion healer. These are the dogs who basically are those dogs who give elder people a reason to wake up in the morning and kind of like, not forcefully, but really in a nice way, says, hey, I gotta pee. I don't want to pee in your house, but you have to get up. So he will bark at you, kind of encouraging you to do things to get you out of that emotional state you're in, or in your frustration or your emotional state, and get you out of there to get out. And outside, he will be very helpful and playful and do things with you, kind of playful, unless you're mean. And if you're mean, he's like, you know what? I don't have to do that. I would just ignore you. And that is emotional feedback too. And then we go back in the first line, in the last row of the first line, which is a teacher companion. He's a teacher who knows exactly what you're up to, but he doesn't have to. But he's very consistent, pushing you in the direction that you have to go. This is the dog who you want to walk, and he's like, I'm not going. No way, you can drag me, I'm not moving. And you don't intimidate me because I'm going to intimidate you back. And then we have the second row, the last line, which is a healer companion, which is a dog who will come to you, hang out with you, wants to be available, but if you don't want to, he's not pushing you. He's not coming up to you for cuddling because you feel depressed if you don't want to. Okay? Or he will not come to you because you're angry, but he will be near you, hanging out there, trying to give you as much energy as possible without offending you in person. And then we have the companion, which is the last line of the last row, where we look at the dog as, hey, you want to be friends? Fine. You don't? No big deal. I'm going to live my life on my own. But you know what? I'm available whenever you want to. And that's it. Does he need your affection? Not really. Does he give you affection? Only if you ask to. But this is kind of a dog that I would see is perfectly for a family that is so busy with anybody else things, with school, with work and all these, things we're busy with. And this dog is just running his program, being available for whoever needs the dog. And I see also dogs like teachers that have this high frequency quality to be able to move in all those fields, like a joker, all those fields. He can do anything that he needs to get the job done. One other thing that I observed is that those teachers and generally the teacher line are these the dogs who end up in a shelter. So for you guys who work with shelters, you likely see most of those dogs in those shelters. And here's why. Because if things don't go the right way, they will point it out. If you're angry and you manually do something to your dog because you're angry, he's going to hurt you and he's going to pay the price for it. And if you're being a jerk about it and you're not doing your path and your work, he's going to show you to the point that you get upset and you get triggered. And then you're going to likely surrender the dog or find him another house or, dump him or put him to sleep. Not you, but, whoever is affected by it. And does it resonate with you what I'm saying here? Have you guys seen these kind of things? I would love your feedback here. And of course, you're welcome to share the video. And the other thing that I observed was that those dogs who are teachers are the ones who will shut down at the shelter first, because they get so frustrated that they will literally shut down because they feel such an injustice. And see a dog who knows things, recognizes where he is, understands energetically why he's here, and see this injustice happening around his environment, and he sees that he cannot affect his environment, and no matter what he does, he feels helpless. And helplessness is one of those things, most of you know already, that you just give up. So that's a call here. Don't give up. Don't be like those teachers who are being closed in the shelter. Don't create your own shelter for yourself just because things don't go the way you want. And just because you know that things should be different, don't give up. Right? But with your actions, you can affect your environment. With your actions, the way you come in as a teacher, healer, or companion person, I guess, you need to be aware that you can help your dog, giving him his feedback that he needs to understand that you got the message. At the same time, show the appreciation to your dog for being capable and being in alignment with his job description or his arrangement to be here for you through this ascension process or through his healing process. And I know many times I've seen dogs who play different roles in the family system. I need some coffee. I need some coffee. And, talking about those dogs who are aware of who you are, we want to give them that minute or moment of appreciation. And appreciation is a gesture from your heart space, and don't take it lightly. How many times have you done things for people just because you've been appreciated for no money exchange? That appreciation has such a high value, you cannot even afford it. There's no person out there that can afford to pay for appreciation. It's such a high level of feedback. So when you work with your dogs, no matter what you do, in your reward system, food reward, affection, add appreciation to the equation as a feedback. If your dog is barking at you while you're sitting on your computer trying to work, and that dog tells you, hey man, you're going into depression mode right now. I can see your energy field changing, and he has this abilities to recognize when you change emotionally or energetically or medically, when something going on with your energetic system, body system, or with your health system changes. He wants to make you aware of it. And I'll tell you something that happened yesterday night. Actually, yeah, yesterday night. My wife was on a trip and she came back 3 days after. And I was super excited. I was working on my bathtub, finishing that up. And I have ADD and all my brain was all over the place. And I was so excited coming home, and I took the dogs out. I came back home, and usually I have a feeding system because my ADD, I don't want to forget things. I have a system. So I put the balls on the top of the crate, which means the dogs need to be fed, right? And for some reason, I ended up in bed, and I forgot to feed my dogs. And Muggsy was whining about it. I'm telling you, in the past, where I was in a healthy place, I got so angry at my dogs. It was 10 years ago. I would yell at the dogs, shut up! I would be angry. But my wife tells me, she's intuitive. She says, I feel the dog has belly ache. And I was like, yeah, he was eating grass. I think something doesn't go well. Maybe he's stressed because you were gone. I kind of find all these excuses kind of thing. And I took him out for a potty just in case he needs to go to the bathroom. And in my blindness, 1 o'clock in the morning, I didn't think of looking at the balls, because usually when I'm done, I put both balls in each other so I know I fed them, my system. And I didn't see that. So I walked back in the bed, and Maxie was whining again. And he has this weird kind of, I'm going to record it one day, complaining, feeling injustice and need that's not being completed. And Barbara told me, did you feed the dogs? I was like, of course. And I kind of got in my angry space. Of course I'd feed the dogs. Or maybe I didn't. So I went up, walked up, and looked at the crate, and I saw the two balls on top of it. I was like, holy bark. I forgot to feed the dogs. I tell you, in 10 years, I maybe forgot twice. I also forgot one day, one dog outside in the yard, because I thought I put him back in. I had 13 dogs back then, and he was kind of the dog who was around the corner. I totally forgot he was outside. And he was not a nice dog. And next day in the morning, I had some clients coming in with their pet sitting business, and took the dog out in the yard, opened the door, and voila, he's standing there. Oh, I got breakfast. And like, oh my God, I saved the puppy, so nothing happened. So everything was fine then. He wasn't as bad as I thought he was at the end. But anyway, I'm just sharing here that I was in an anger space, and this dog helped me become aware. Hey man, you need help. And it was kind of like in that system that I was talking with my wife yesterday about, getting a little bit of ADD counseling and hire a professional to help me out a little bit, because it affects my business, affects how I work my clients, and obviously it affects my dog. So my emotional state and I wouldn't say disability, because I don't think ADD is a medical condition with me. It's more a trauma-based condition, but who am I to judge what condition I'm in? I should get a professional. Even though I had, back in 2012, I spoke with a therapist who is known to invent that kind of thing, adult ADD. And he told me, definitely you are. Not as extreme as others, but you are. But I think he didn't observe that from a trauma perspective. He just saw the facts. And yes, you have ADD. Where does ADD come from? I had to pay several $100s more for that, and I didn't have that money back then. So I skipped that part. But it hits my door yesterday. And I think, so I went online and signed up for not a mentorship, like for a coaching relationship with one person, which I don't know yet the quality of that person, but that's what I could afford, so that's where I went. I'll give you updates on that. But I just wanted to point out that your emotions affect your dog. And I wanted to share you a story that I, a couple of years back, I started doing online training extensively. And I think I was in a 5th year anniversary, kind of, sort of. And I started creating my online programs and how to coach people online. And there was this guy calling me at some point, very upset, and he basically demanded that I adopt his dog. He wanted to surrender the dog. He called several rescues. He was a Burble Mastiff, and Burble South African Mastiff. I know you guys were very precise. Okay, corrected. And he was telling me that his dog being an asshole, and his dog is going to be put to sleep unless I take the dog, because no other rescue will take him. And I was like, oh man, hold back a little bit. Tell me what the situation is, so maybe I can better understand if I can help you. And he was telling me that his dog starts biting him, and really to the point that he's bleeding. And He's being a jerk, and he punched the dog in his face because he was biting him. He didn't know what to do with it, and I was like, "Oh man, okay." So, but I was listening to this person. Something in my guts told me, ask him the question when it happens. I'm like, okay. So, sir, what usually when is the time that your dog usually being a jerk and an asshole, according to his description? And he said, well, usually in the afternoon. Oh, okay. Like what time? Like 6 where dogs? I thought where dogs have zoomies. He said no, around 3. That's strange. He didn't make up. I says, do you take your dog out for potty breaks? I said, all the time. I take him out for potty breaks. And I was like, how long does those potty breaks take? Like he goes outside, he pees, he comes back in. So you're not going with your dog? I says, no, I'm not. I'm just letting the dog out and he comes back in. Okay. So now I recognize that he lets the dog out, but the dog goes back in on his own. So he wants to be with his owner. That puts them in a healer category. Okay. In a horizontal or vertical, I didn't know yet. So the next question was, what do you do, sir, for a living? Like, what's your, you're at home all day? He's like, yeah, I work from home. And like, what do you do? Yeah, I'm programming. I'm a programmer and I do work at home. Bless you, mama. Um, and and he told me that he's working all day. And I was like, are you on your computer all day long? I said, yeah. Why, you have a problem with that? I was like, no, I don't have a problem. But I think your dog has a problem and you have a problem. I was like, why is that? Because I think your dog is not biting you because he's an asshole. It's because I feel you're getting overwhelmed with your work. And around 3 o'clock, your system basically goes into a negative pattern. And your dog wants you to move away from your desk. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, let me ask you a question because something in my guts told me to ask that question. I was like, it's not my business. I don't care what he does. He just wants to get rid of his dog, asshole. Sorry for the asshole thing. But I really felt very angry about his decision to put his dog down because his dog beat him. You know, there are other options too. But he wasn't negotiating the training. He just wanted to get rid of the dog. And I was really pissed about it. It took me personally. And he told me, yeah, well, I take medication and I'm bipolar and I have depression issues. And but I stopped my medications because I gained weight. And so yeah, I'm handling it. Do you? Was my next question. Like, yeah. Like, well then, how about that? You're sitting too long on your desk. And let's say example, because you know how it feels like, right? You have been in that space of, being bipolar and having depression. Let's say I tell you, hey man, I have depression, I'm bipolar, and I'm sitting 8 hours on my desk, on my computer, and I feel kind of like slowly angry while I'm working, frustrated. And I feel like I shouldn't do this shit, but I need to do this because I need to earn money. What would you tell me? And he got quiet. He said, well, I would tell you to get off the table and go get some fresh air. Right. Now let's pretend you are my dog and you live with me and I'm on the desk working all day long and you try to tell me that I should get my ass out of my desk and get out and do something. And I don't give a bark how you try to tell me. And I just ignore you. All I do is I kick you out and go back to my desk and then I bring you back in and continue on my desk. Now, how would you get me that message so I can get it? And he's like, holy shit, you're right. I was like, right on what? I didn't say anything. I wanted him to have that experience and understanding exactly what's going on here. I don't want me to tell him that because it's his experience and his evolution and process and not mine. I just saw the picture and I wanted him to see the pictures the way I did. And he said, well, I punched him a couple of times in the face. So he knows exactly that if he does anything else, he's going to get hurt. So biting me out of my desk would be an option. And there was a big silence on my side. I was like, okay. I appreciate your honesty, man. I really appreciate. Now, what exactly do you expect me to do? Do you want me to adopt your dog? Do you want me to tell you how to put your dog to sleep? Or do I have to find you a rescue to surrender your emotional support dog or your medical alert dog? What exactly you want me to do? And he's like, no, I'm going to keep him because I feel he's right and I'm wrong, and I have to change the way I have to get back on my meds, and I have to call um, my therapist, and I have to work this out, because I understand why. Since my wife left, he was the only person, I call him, that actually was here to listen to me. And I basically start ignoring him and his needs, not only his needs but also my needs. So I need to get my shit together, man. I was like, I totally with you here, totally with you. I'm not a therapist, don't take me wrong, but you know what, I just ask questions. I have the right to ask questions, like, how do you feel about it? What's your idea about it? And his dog, who was a burble, who most people put to sleep because he bites, turned his dog around in less than a week. Actually, I checked in with him a couple of days later what he's going to do, because I was a little bit worried about the dog, understanding where he's coming from. And he said, "No, are you kidding me? I'll keep him. You know, people paid lots of money to get that kind of dog, and I have him for free, and I almost dumped him." I was like, "I'm happy to hear that." And this was my experience, that as a behaviorist working with aggressive dogs, if a dog does something to his owner, don't judge the dog. Try to understand the big picture. Try to see the quality of the dog. Try to see the relationship they do both have in that aspect. Try to see the dynamic in the family, who does what, why, with whom, what's the energy behind that. And get your ass off the desk and try to trust your heart, tap into it, and see if you would be the dog. Be empathetic with the situation. How does the dog feel in that situation? And I see a couple of you guys are in my mentoring program. I appreciate you taking the time and being here and listening to that, because you don't find a document about that, that's basically raw feed right now, uncooked. Check for yourself and see, can you pick up that energy that a dog is going through? And then close the moment of your eyes and go into, I am my dog, I'm in this situation. How does it feel to me, my environment? What gets my attention? Who gets my attention? What is the situation? And then look at in that direction, see what gets your attention. Is it the car? Is it your partner, your child, your dog? Do you see yourself in that picture? And then ask, what is the relationship between me and what I see? And then you get this knowing of what the root of that is that you have to work with. And sometimes I understand we have some filters that are being in place, because there is an energy out there that is against you going into the ascension process, keeps you down. There's a huge industry behind that, you not doing the ascension process. It's a $5 billion industry trying to make your dog being an asshole, keeping your dog sick, keeping your dog not in his frequency, for you not to evolve. And I'm saying that full conscious, and you can call me out on that, and I can prove you technically, scientifically, and energetically, if you have the guts, to show you exactly how it looks like, how that energy creates a barrier between you and your dog and your ascension process. Starting for the fast food industry, into the fast feed industry, into the convenience industry, that is all about taking your money as easy as possible and you feeling as good as possible. By doing that, ruining your relationship with your ascension team that is in front of you. And it doesn't matter how many dogs you have. It's not only dogs. You can have a horse and an ascension team. Okay, it's where your affinity is, where you are being attracted to. Is it a horse? Is it a person? Is it a duck? Right? And all these things affect you, and in again affects your dog in return. So your convenience and your implanted belief system that you're being funneled into blocks you off of seeing the reality around yourself and seeing the true being your dog is, or your pet is, your cat. And I'm not sure, I'm not such a psychic, um, but you guys who can tap into the energy, see what are the animals that have that ability to help us in the ascension process, right? Like whales, I believe they are anchors of frequencies on earth, in the water. Sharks too, elephants, anchors. They all do this energy work here that we are not aware of. There's a whole ecological system help us ascend. And with our convenience, we destroy our neighborhood. We destroy our plants. We destroy our trees. We use cars. We don't think about how it affects our environment and how it affects our dogs. And you know what? You stupid thing. How about I give you some tranquilizer? You shut the fuck up barking all the time because you're pissing me off and not recognizing my anger that is boiling. And the dog is just here playing that role for me to handle that. And it says, hey, buddy, thanks for barking. I changed my mind. I appreciate you for telling me that my anger affects my emotions and my emotions affect my anger. And it's kind of like how I express it, right? Me feeling guilty of not being able to handle the situation makes me angry. Thank you for pointing it out to me. How about I change about it? How about I deal with my anger, I deal with my trauma, I deal with my emotions and get you the help you need, get you your friend back that you see as a potential. What do you think? Do you have one of those dogs, a healer teacher companion? Do you have a teacher companion, companion healer? What kind of dogs do you have? So if you're interested, I do a workshop soon about the spiritual quality of dogs, in dogs in particular, but it applies to other animals. It applies also to horses and all the sentient beings that we have out there. They have emotions to that level, but not as high an emotional level that dogs are. I think dogs, in the scale of emotional intelligence, are the highest being with us. I wouldn't say other than us, because we're making our emotions so complicated. We lose our shit on the way there. But dogs are very honest about their emotions, and they don't have an ego, which is great. So that's the pure emotions right there, without the effectiveness of ego in between. And I don't say ego is a bad thing. We need ego. Our ego is equals the dog aggression from my perspective. We need ego to survive, and dogs need aggression to survive. So instead of calling the dog's ego, we call it aggression. My dog is aggressive instead of saying my dog is egoistic. That's my point, right? But I would like you to think about it and share your thoughts about it. How do you feel about it? And if I do the workshop, would be interested in joining and learning a little bit about it, because I feel if you're in rescue, if you're a trainer, if you're a behaviorist, or just care for your dog in person, or you're a veterinarian or vet tech, and you see a dog coming in and you're like, wow, this is a healer. I have to watch the food quality, specifically food quality. I have to watch how he grounds. I need to give him exercises. I need to do this. I need to do that, right? And then you have the other option is like, oh man, this dog is a teacher. I will not give that dog to this person because he's going to end up in trouble. And I don't think it's a good idea. If that person doesn't see a therapist, that dog will end up in a shelter, or he will be returned. Or if you're a behaviorist and people tell you, oh, this dog is biting my family, shock the shit out of it, you're like, hey man, let me tell you the story here that I heard and that I confirmed with my experience, that, hey, Laura, that, hey, your dog is not what you think it is, and the situation that you see comes in from a ego space, and you're butthurt because you feel offended that your dog did something to you or your family, but there is a reason for that. And sometimes, I have to be honest, it's not always the person who has the dog the reason for it, unless the dog doesn't have trauma. So usually people love dogs, get dogs in, but here's another point, and I take that as a closing sentence. You adopt a dog that likely has the same trauma as you have. You likely get a dog or gonna work with a dog who has the same emotional struggle that you have. You likely are affinity to a dog who has the same core trauma as you have, and so you feel empathy internally so deeply about that dog that you want to be part of his healing process. But you have to recognize his healing process is your healing process, or your healing process is his healing process, and you both can join that team of healing, becoming an ascension team in this best possible version. Thank you for listening today, and I need to get more coffee. And I wish you a pleasant, awesome weekend. And maybe I help you kind of think about this a little bit. And I would love your feedback. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend.
This is Coffee with Holistic Dog Professionals. Learn from Roman and David how to become your dog's best friend.